which is great.
Yeah, who wants to know about Kashrut? Okay, so thanks for coming. So there was a class in this series last year, inspired by Sarah, which dealt with the topic of not bar not, which is basically cooking parve things in gendered utensils, right? So you make a parve cake in a dairy cake pan, and you're going to serve it after a meat meal or things of that sort. So that class was recorded. It's on the YouTube channel, and the source sheet is here on this page. So you're welcome. Encourage everyone to go and review that class or learn it for the first time and ask me any follow-up questions you may have based on that. That was sort of I thought maybe a significant percentage of the Kashrut questions I've received I think are answered in that class. But there's some other ones. Okay, I get a lot about these two. So that's we're going to look at that. This is just Shulchan Aruch. This is very we're not doing this in a very conceptual way. We're not going back to the Gemaras and going to the first principles and working through and tracing through the Halakhot history. We're doing this is a very it's fairly lazy for me to prepare. Just bottom line Halakha, because I just think there's a lot of confusion about this and the laws of Kashrut. There's a certain theory behind Kashrut, which once you kind of intuit, you can kind of work through on your own quite a few practical questions that emerge, right? So let's just to review. Kashrut in Rabbinic Judaism is different from Kashrut as you may have imagined it from the Torah in one significant way, maybe more, but one major way, which is Rabbinic Kashrut. The Kashrut in Rabbinic Judaism is concerned with tam, with the taste of things, not just the things themselves. This is called, in the language of Chazal, tam kikar. The taste of the thing is considered as the thing itself, and we're concerned about both the taste as well as the thing. So that's part one. Step two then is taste can be absorbed into foods, expelled from foods, can be absorbed into utensils, expelled from utensils. It's a physical, tangible, observable phenomenon that is transferred from thing to thing, and the way in which taste, is transferred and absorbed or diluted and nullified, that is like much of the laws of Kashrut. The detailed laws of Kashrut are just the ways in which this physical phenomenon of taste is, again, shared, spread, absorbed, dissipated. Now, this can be challenging for us because we don't perceive tam in most of our lives in kitchens. This is because our kitchens are made almost entirely of materials that were invented in the last 60 years, right? Your, countertops, your stainless steel, the alloys in your metal, the plastics. These are all things that were invented in the last 60 years, or were commercialized and became, part of our homes in the last 60 years. But if you use a cast iron skillet or a wooden cutting board, you will observe tam. If you cut an onion on a wooden cutting board and then you cut an apple right after, the apple will taste like an onion. If you cook something in an cast iron skillet, it will absorb that taste and it will impart it into something else. I'm sorry, Tracy, I just ran out of source sheets. Maybe, look at that, wow. Wow, what a...
Take all of this.
I was going to say, thank you.
I think that there's a phrase of, Edmund Burke, writing about the French Revolution. He says that, one point in time, 1,000 swords would have leapt from their scabbards to defend Marie Antoinette, and now they're attacking her. So that's what it looked like, because you all okay. No one else thought of Burke when you saw that? Okay.
You had a special perspective.
That's true. Fair enough. Right, so tam exists. It does exist with old things, and the laws of Kashrut. So let's just, again, remind ourselves how tam works. Tam is transferred with heat. Something has to be piping hot for tam to transfer. Things that are cold, there's no transfer of taste. So if milk falls on cold meat, just rinse it off, dry it off, everything's fine. Okay? Dairy and meat touch while they're cold, it's fine. You want to have, pour a glass of cold milk in your fleshig tea cups, that's fine. Cereal and milk in your fleshig soup bowls, that's fine. Totally fine. Okay? Taste doesn't transfer unless there is heat. How hot? Has to be like yad soledik kli rishon, like piping hot. Your hand recoils of a primary vessel that was cooked on the fire. Okay? Absent those phenomena, we're not going to have transfer of taste. What other rules apply? Okay, taste is nullified in 60 times its volume under most circumstances, okay? The solution to pollution is dilution, okay? So if you have something non-kosher that is spread to 60 times its volume, the taste is not perceptible anymore, and it's not concerned about that. Last year we spent a lot of time talking about a taste that is rancid because it's old, and an old rancid taste that's been absorbed inside a vessel for more than 24 hours. That taste can no longer render something unkosher because it's only a positive enhancing taste that makes something unkosher. That the tam ki kar, the taste is like the thing itself, is only true if it's an enhancing taste, not if it's a rancid, detracting taste. And so once something's been absorbed for more than 24 hours in a pot, it can no longer render something unkosher. You have a pot that was used for clam chowder on Monday, and you used it to cook pasta on Wednesday, that pasta is 100% kosher. It's a rabbinic prohibition against using a non-kosher pot, but if it is used, the pasta or whatever is 100% kosher. Okay. So basic rules. These are like basic building blocks of kashrut. Now let's get into some, and we can talk through I'm happy, maybe after the presentation we can talk through some of the things that happen in your life. Okay, just to get that again, a lot of this I went over last year. You can watch the video. We can look at the source sheet together if that would also be helpful. Right? Soap has a rancid taste, right? So if there's soap mixed in this system, then you're not going to have a kashrut problem because soap is a rancid taste, and so if you're doing dishes, okay, or the wrong thing, your fleishik spoon goes in your dairy dishwasher or whatever, hey, there's soap involved, it's all mixed around, hot water maybe piping hot water, but there's soap, and so the mixing of dairy and meat is with this mixture of soap. If there's a rancid taste, there's going to be no kashrut problems b'diavad after the fact. You're doing dishes by hand. If you're doing dishes by hand, by definition, the water is not so hot that your hand can't be in the water. And so there's not going to be a kashrut problem even if you don't use soap. There's not going to be a kashrut problem after the fact if you accidentally wash the wrong thing together, if you're doing the dishes by hand, unless it is so hot that you can't put your hands up using gloves, or you're holding it from the side under really, really hot water, right? Sometimes you have really piping hot water from your tap. It's so hot you couldn't put your hands, like I grew up in a building like that. It got really, really hot from the tap, dangerously hot, so you could do dishes from the side. Then you could create kashrut problems. Okay. This is what I want to talk about tonight, okay? This is all just like review, reminding ourselves of some of the dynamics, the physics of kashrut, and how taste travels or doesn't travel from one item to the other. I guess the other thing just to keep in mind, we assume that every utensil, every knife, every spoon, every pot is hollow and fills up its entirety of its volume with the taste of the substance that it's absorbed in. So if you take a dairy spoon, let's say you take a dairy spoon and you stick it in a pot of chicken soup. So the chicken soup, let's say it's on the fire, it's bubbling away, so it's piping hot. So now we have the taste that's absorbed in the dairy spoon is piping hot, it's expelled into the chicken soup. You have a mixture of dairy and meat. Big kashrut problem is the entire chicken. What do? How do we evaluate the situation? What do we have to determine?
1 in 60.
60 times the volume, right, of the chicken soup to the what? To the why the entire spoon is these, right? You really only need 60 times the volume of the dairy that's absorbed in the spoon. So we don't know precisely how much dairy was absorbed in the spoon, and so we assume up to the entire volume. We're going to be strict, and so we assume up until the entire volume of the spoon was like the spoon was entirely hollow, like molecularly filled with milk, and it all goes out into the chicken soup the moment you stick the spoon in. And at the 60 times the volume of the spoon, then the soup is still kosher. But if not, then the soup is become treif. Yes, Jeff?
Is the submerged part of the spoon, or is it the entire spoon?
So it's a metal spoon. We say the entire spoon because the language of the Shulchan Aruch is cham miktsato cham bekula, right? Metal transfers heat, and so the whole thing. But depending on the substance, maybe it wouldn't be that case. Yeah.
So the soup isn't kosher. What about the vessel that the soup is in?
That would also become not kosher. Yeah. It absorbs the taste of the soup. Yeah.
Sounds really Aristotelian to separate the form of the spoon.
No, I don't think it's. I think it's just assuming we're just assuming we want to be strict and assume that it's just imagine that it's like a spot. What's the worst it could be? The worst it could be is the entire volume of the spoon is filled with milk. So that's the worst it could be. So it's probably not that bad. So if you have 60 times the volume of the spoon, you're safe. Now, it could be how much milk was absorbed in the spoon because maybe the spoon was new and you used it to spoon, hot butter or something into a recipe, and you very carefully took a teaspoon, and you put, so you might know that it was not that much, so then you don't have to, assume. And even if you spoon the hot butter, and then you put it in your baking pancakes, I don't know, you spoon a little thing of butter, and you use it to put on your pancakes, whatever, So the butter is like most of the butter ended up on the pancakes. It wasn't all absorbed in the spoon because you put it on the pan. But nonetheless, that's how we restrict in that way. Yeah, Sarah.
Suppose you know that you never used the spoon as a fusion.
Oh yeah, it's a great point. Most of we say dairy spoon, meat fork. They probably aren't, right? Because if you never use that spoon in piping hot dairy, liquid dairy, like what would you? I don't know if you had like a what do you call it?
Cream soup.
What?
Like a fondue?
No, yeah, fondue or the cream. Yeah, I was thinking, what's that soup with cheese on top? It comes little French onion soup. Yeah. So if you use a spoon for French onion soup, then it's it's a real dairy spoon. But most of our dairy spoons use it for cereal, use it for yogurt. It's not actually a dairy spoon. And a lot of our things that we eat off of, right? A plate is not. You don't put piping hot food like. If you, right, so it's not kli rishon because it's from, usually, right, it's going to be, you make mac and cheese in a pot, in a big bowl, and then you scoop it onto your plate. So it's cliche, and you what?
What if you put it in the microwave?
Put in the microwave, that's an interesting question, microwaves. So microwaves, it's an interesting question because microwaves there's no heat. Right? What the status of microwaves in halakha is really, really interesting because there's no heat. It's just sort of like the microwaves create kinetic energy in the molecules of the food without any heat existing anywhere else. The heat sort of comes from the food outward, which is different from standard forms of cooking. It's a question whether bishul, if you cook in a microwave on Shabbat, have you violated bishul? If you cook dairy meat in a microwave together, have you violated the prohibition of cooking dairy meat together? Maybe not, because you haven't actually applied heat. You've just sent microwaves to agitate the molecules of the food. It's like an open question. So I don't know, would it count as a kli rishon? I don't know. You shouldn't do it, okay? You shouldn't do it. But if something happens, I use my dairy knife and I cut this. Why is your knife dairy? Did you use it for, maybe you cut hot lasagna with it from the casserole, perhaps. But did you really? Actually, within 24 hours, right? Because if it's not 24 hours, then it's rancid anyway. So very often, a lot, when we're evaluating what, mistakes that happen, it's not such a problem. The analogy, this is Chaim Soloveitchik the Professor Chaim Soloveitchik made the analogy of learning Kashrut from studying the laws of Kashrut. It's like learning how to drive from reading insurance company accident reports. Because, right, that's what, if you take your this and you stick it in that and you mix it, here's the outcome. So it's there was this accident, this car crash happened, and here's the result, and this is how it happened, this is how it occurred, and here's the outcome. But how to drive is about avoiding those collisions, and keeping a kosher kitchen is about avoiding these circumstances. So it's a very different, but many things are really okay after the fact. Any other questions I want to say so far? Yeah.
You said okay after the fact. Earlier you talked about if you pour milk into your...
Yeah, that's totally fine, because that's totally fine. That's totally fine. There's no reason not to pour cold dairy into your fleshig bowls. The Shulchan Aruch doesn't even mention any practice of having two sets of dishes. People probably didn't have dishes at all. I don't know if we've had dishes. Certainly not two sets of dishes. That's not in the Shulchan Aruch. And that you can do lechatchila. There's no reason not to. There's a famous story about also about Professor Chaim Soloveitchik when he was a child, that he and his father, Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik, were, eating, breakfast without their mother, who maybe she was away or something, and she came back and saw them eating, cereal and milk in her fleshig china, and she said, "What are you doing?" And they explained, "No, it's totally fine. It's cold. It's whatever." And she, I think the language is like, "You and your shulchan aruch are going to trip on my kitchen or something." But it is in fact fine. And so too, also it means if you're, I don't know, when I was in college, I had I ate breakfast in the non-kosher dining halls, and I had cereal and milk. Cereal was kosher, milk was kosher. I used the regular bowls and the spoons that they provided, and the same idea.
So what is it that's fine for you that's not fine?
Cooking something in a non-kosher utensil, which if the utensil has not been used for 24 hours, the food is kosher b'diavad, but it's a prohibition against cooking in a non-kosher utensil. Sorry, thank you for making me clarify. Okay, let's look at little shulchan. Any other? Look at some shulchan aruch. Okay, see something new. Okay, snow no silka, shechatachan b'sakin shel basar ben yoma. So you take a beet or radishes or beets that are cut with a meat knife, that's ben yomo. This knife was used for cutting hot meat within 24 hours. Oh, she'eno mekunach, or it's dirty. It was used for cutting maybe cold, maybe it was never clean, so it has kind of fat and grease on it. Asur lochlam b'chalav ad shito minkom hachatak kedei netilat makom. You can't eat that radish with dairy until you remove from the spot of the radish like a netilat makom, a sliver of radish where the radish was cut. Shehu ka'avi etzma, which is about a finger width. Yitamenu v'lo yehebo tam basar. Or you taste it and see, does the radish taste like meat? Does it not taste like meat? She'az mutar b'tacha, because if it doesn't taste like meat, you just rinse it off and it's fine to have it with dairy. Okay, he's introducing here the idea that there are some foods that are harif, that are sharp, which have which even when cold, draw out the taste of the meat into themselves. Not fully, but kidei netilat makom, like they penetrate somewhat into the radish. V'yeshamrim, some say dehu hadin le'enu ben yom v'hu mekunach, and some say even if it's not used in 24 hours and it is clean, even so we have to remove a little bit, because the power of sharp things not only is that it can cause transfer of taste when things aren't hot, it can also revive old rancid tastes. The sharpness of the radish would revive what would otherwise be an old rancid taste absorbed in the knife. And so, and if you don't do all these precautions and you cook it anyway with dairy, you need 60 times the volume of the dairy or the thing you put it into, to nullify the taste of meat. The amount of the radish that was touched by so it would be 1 finger width in the entire surface of let's say it's a centimeter or something. So a centimeter times the surface area of the radish cut by the knife times centimeter, that many cc's. You need 60 times that to nullify the meat in the radish. So to use a Gentile knife, meaning a knife that was used for non-kosher food. Okay, that's Shulchan Aruch. The Ramos Israel, let's write the Ashkenazi commentator on the Shulchan Aruch writes, V'im chatzachan dak dak, if you cut it, very sharp, very finely, then you need 60 times the entire radish to be nullified, right? Because the surface area of the cut surface is like too much. You just put the whole thing. And some say, right, any cut with a prohibited knife, a non-kosher knife as opposed to a meat knife, it's a stricter rule. Oh no, some say, the Rama is saying, actually, even though Shulchan Aruch says only netilat makom, only a finger width into the radish, the Rama says, no, some say actually, we're concerned the entire radish becomes meat or becomes non-kosher if it's cut with a knife that was non-kosher or that was meat. That such is the power of the sharpness of the radish that the taste is sort of spread really quickly. And this we should do at initio, but after the fact, but we're not going to prohibit, if you haven't done this, only nitila, only a taking away amount. Because this is if you cut it itself. So what if you cut the green part of the radish, the top, the green part? What about that? You don't have to be worried at all. Okay, why? Why differentiate between the radish and it's not sharp? Very good. Okay, sharp things. It's not like the species of radish has a special power. It's not a magical vegetable. It's just the sharpness of the radish itself, not the green part. If we don't know what knife was used to cut the radish, we're lenient. Therefore, we can buy radishes from the vegetable monger, even though they have evidence of cutting on them, right? You're just buying the radish, right? I mean, somebody cut the radish, right? That's how you have these radishes. There's cuts on them, but we don't know. Maybe like there's this like the Gentile farmer used his chicken flaying knife for cutting the radishes. We're not concerned about that because we say most likely the cutting was done by, I think Marav Chatzina, I think those are like farming tools. In the process of digging them up out of the ground, they got cut in this way. A hoe or some sort of gardening tool, as opposed to a knife itself. Okay. In the place where we know for sure all the radishes, the radish salesman takes the radish, takes a knife, cuts off the green part and cuts into the radish or cuts them in half, whatever it is. That's the only radishes you can get. You can't, you have to need radishes, so just take off a little section from the top of the radish and then we're good to go. That's Aleph, okay? That's Siv Aleph. This is not particularly earth-shattering, but okay. It's when we're building up to what I think is, a question I do get sometimes, so that's where, step by step. Bet. In chatach lo shumin u'bitsalin v'karshinin v'tamcha shakarin crane. So if you cut shumin is garlic, good. Bitzalim are onions. Krishin are, I don't know, you know what krishin are? I don't know what they are. I couldn't, okay. V'tamcha, you know what tamcha are? I don't know what tamcha is either, okay. Anyone? No?
Maybe it's horseradish?
Shakur, because it says shakurin crane, which sounds like crane, yeah, probably. Okay. So these are sharp things, okay? Upeirot chamutzim, or pickled fruits. V'dagim meluchim, and salted fish. So these are things with very strong flavors. The salt, the vinegar, or the sharpness of the vegetable itself. Dinam sheveh lechatach, so the same law as the radish. So it's not just a radish, it's anything that is sharp like garlic and onion, and also salted fish and pickled fruits. The Rabbi says, Mikol makom mutar lechol mirkachot charifim shel ovdei chachavim kagon zangavil kyoto. You can eat. I think mirkachot are spices in this context. Non-Jewish spices such as zangavil. Zangavil is ginger. Okay. Diyesh lehem kilim yuchadim lekach o tolshimoto. Okay, these things have their special tools, dedicated tools for grinding spices, for preparing, for processing spices. They don't use their chicken flaying knife. It's just a spice grinding processing tool. Or tolshim, they just pick them. Like the vanilla is picked from the tree. The the ginger is dug from the ground. Okay, without using knives. There are no knives involved. Okay, so Gimel. Okay, so anything that was spices that are ground in a mortar, a meat mortar, that was used within that day, you can't eat those spices with dairy. Some say even if it's not within 24 hours. Why? I guess because the spices that you're grinding, the spices in the mortar, the spices themselves might be sharp and might...
I don't know, when you grind something, it heats up a lot.
That's the reason. The reason is that preservatives. People use spices in Middle Ages early modern times as preservatives.
So the rancid taste of the meat absorbed in the mortar is revived by the spices.
That's true, but I understand at least when you grind flour, it gets very hot. So I would assume when you grind spices, it heats up also.
Interesting. But that wouldn't heat wouldn't. Not to piping hot to get warm.
Why is
but heat wouldn't be sufficient to revive a rancid taste. But the spices might. I think it's a harif spice kind of thing. Yes.
Why is it surprising in light of the beginning when we said v'yesh omrim duhu adin la'eno ben yomo? Isn't it the same principle?
Yes. If we say that harif has the power to revive old tastes, so too would be the case with spices, right? Well, with its extension from the radish to a spice. So that would be the extension. That's the surprising part. I'm easily surprised. Okay, Dalit. This is really what Dalit and Hay are really the ones that are pretty are sort of come up a lot. Me limons, okay, which I think means lemon juice. Shemivi'in ha'odekachavim, the Gentiles sell, right? So they're cutting lemons and squeezing them. Just again, sort of an aside, since we're all studying this together, the language talks about Ovdei Kochavim, talks about idol worshippers, and I'm translating as Gentiles. That's because it was seen as less offensive to refer to Gentiles as idolaters, because that way the books could pass the censor, because they could say, well, we're not talking about you, we're talking about, those pagans of yore, whom we, had this very antagonistic relationship with, but not you, our beloved, classical neighbors, and so as a general rule, like, and this is true, like the Talmud, whenever the Talmud says, oh, the Kachavim, idol worshiper, I think the original oldest manuscripts are almost always, Goy or Nochri, and here too, there's nothing about, it's not about worshiping idols, and that's not at all relevant to this at all. It's just some people don't keep kosher. That's what the issue is. Okay, so just anyway, so the idol worshippers sell lemonade. Okay, right? It's not. Also, these pieces of salted fish, like that they bring in barrels, like some herring or something. Mutarim. These are permissible. Okay. Why? The Rama says, they bring and process lots of them at the same time. Even so what's the case? They have their non-kosher knives. They're cutting, chopping up frog legs or something, and then let's make lemonade. They chop up lemons. So like the first lemon is made with a non-kosher, dirty, unclean knife that was used just minutes before to cut frog's legs. But, and indeed, that lemon, like you could not eat those first lemons would in fact not be kosher. But this guy, he's cutting like 2 crates of lemons to make lemonade. So, a few lemons in, the knife is entirely clean. There's no taste being absorbed by the lemons he's cutting. And therefore, when you have like 2 crates of lemons, the non-kosher lemons are nullified in the kosher lemons. And so all of the lemons are permissible. Okay, this is a simple nullification of majority. Okay, if you have, this is like min v'no yavesh, you have a case of, something non-kosher absorbed, mixed in with something kosher, you go by the majority, they're all kosher. All the lemons are kosher. This is a very common circumstance. This is the situation of the, pieces of watermelon sold at the supermarket, right? Or wherever, cut vegetables sold at the supermarket. It's exactly this case, right? They might, who knows what knife they use, it doesn't matter because they're cutting in such volume that even if the very first ones that they cut are not kosher because that knife had been used minutes before without being cleaned for something, non-kosher, it's all batel. The non-kosher ones are nullified in the vast majority of vegetables or fruit that are kosher, have no taste or residue whatsoever from the non-kosher knife, and so it's totally fine. This is you can take this to the supermarket and get yourself some watermelon. Yes, Sarah.
But even watermelon, like suppose I were, at my non-kosher keeping friend's house, and she was like, I would have got you 2 slices of watermelon. That would still be okay because watermelons aren't free, right? Right.
So if the knife was clean, that would be right. What could go wrong? It's cold. Why would you need a kosher knife to begin with to cut watermelon? So let's say if the knife is clean, you wouldn't. But if the knife is not clean, then that would be the problem, right? That would be the problem. Okay. Correct. Yeah.
Would that rule only apply at larger grocery stores? Like let's say it's a smaller boutique grocery store. Maybe they're not having that bulk.
I'm imagining some like hipster or shop in Brooklyn where they sell we only sell sell lard and watermelon like that. It's some new concept in boutique grocers. So I don't know where you would draw the line. I think it's the reality. I think if it's a dirty knife that's cutting something right away, 1-to-1s, you have to worry. But if he's cutting a quantity of vegetables or fruit that he's going to sell that quantity of fruit, I think it's going to be okay. It'll only be the first 1 or 2 that you'd have to worry about if the knife isn't clean. Marilyn.
I was told by Rabbi Sure the health laws don't permit restaurants to use the same knives and cutting boards for meat and for fruits and vegetables.
Okay, so that'd be another reason to be lenient. That makes a certain amount of sense. Okay. I mean, I don't. Do they listen to those? I don't know how much they listen to those laws, and so. Yeah.
But the assumption is that lemons and salted fish are harif?
The assumption here is that the lemons and the salted fish are the salted fish we saw earlier. Lemons, yeah, I don't know. The lemons, I think so. I think.
So even harif things you can buy that were cut with a knife.
Correct. I believe so. Let's hold off on that. That'll become clearer. Okay. Yes.
If someone offers you cut a watermelon, can you assume that the knife is clean?
Oh, like meaning like not from a supermarket, just like a friend off the street. Like, here, want some watermelon?
Or like someone in the office, they like cook some food or something.
That's interesting, because here, like, the context here is we're purchasing from them, and this mass quantity, which allows us not to worry about the knife. But if like, but what if it's somebody in the office, is like, in the cubicle next to you is like, here, have some watermelon.
What if they're a really clean person?
It seems okay to me. I would probably do it if it was watermelon. If it was something not harif, I think I would do it, because I would assume the knife is clean. I mean, if it was dirty, you would taste it and you would know. Right? So, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But it only contaminates the first couple pieces. So once you tasted the dirty piece, then the other double pieces are fine.
Oh, this is awful. Yeah, gosh, this is not kosher. Let me have some more. The rest are fine. Excellent. Good thinking. Oh, I got the non-kosher one. All right. I'll take the next one. No need to worry now. It's all fine. Okay. All right, let's finish. Ulechein, ochlin b'ktzad mekamot hakruv shekarin kompasht. Okay, some places they eat kruv. Kruv is cabbage. Right? What? You know this word? Yeah. Afagav to paris v'chatuv. No, it's cut up. It's cut open and chopped. V'yesh mekamot shemach mirin. But some are strict about that. The ain l'shinot minhag. You shouldn't change that minhag if they're strict in that location. Aval shar dvarim she'ein harif. But other things which are not harif could go tabuchim or lifatot. Okay, apples and lifatot. Lefet is turnip. Yivashim, they're dry, etc. Nogin behen heter kamo b'limons ve'ein lachmir klal. Okay, those are permissible like lemons, and there's no reason to be strict at all. So there's some places. So cabbage is a little bit harif, or some places people are strict about the cabbages, but not with things that are for sure not harif, turnips, etc. All right, should we go on? Yes, John.
So at this point, how many levels of harif do you identify from the Shulchan?
Let's see. Radish, garlic, onions.
Those are all the same, you're saying?
Well, radish, I don't remember how many in the Gemara talks about radishes. I don't know if the onions and garlic are in the Gemara itself or is an extension, but it's certainly a logical extension to include garlic and onions. Salted fish and the pickled fruits, that's like a secondary level, it seems. I don't think that's in the Gemara. He doesn't seem to be treating it quite as strictly. And then you have the spices in the mortar, the meat mortar, and the lemons. The lemons are not sharp at all. They're just acidic, right? Which is similar to the vinegar, yeah. So maybe it's like acid, yeah. Yeah.
Back to the watermelon thing for a second. Let's say you put it in not a serious question.
Good.
If they put it in like a container, so we're assuming the knife is clean. Do we assume that like a container?
Oh, yeah. Well, the containers only contaminate if they're hot or if they're left in there for 24 hours and they have been used, right? So the container's not going to be.
Well, I mean, if you make something, then like last night I had leftover food. I put it in a container. It was still hot.
And I don't wash it out, and I put some watermelon in it. Like I put watermelon in it's my little Tupperware. I have.
With your.
No.
I put hot chili in my Tupperware, From the piping hot, from the pot, I pour it into some Tupperware, stick it in my fridge. The next day at lunch, I eat the chili, and then I put some watermelon in it without cleaning out that seems a little far-fetched, right? Okay, yeah, Sarah?
We don't have to dwell on the watermelon thing if you want to move on, but...
It's fine, I got time.
So supposing no watermelon that was cut with dirty things, right? Supposing we can't even see them, right? It's clean. You alluded to the fact that the mixture of dry things, it's just like if you've already is kosher,
Yeah.
it's all kosher. But watermelon's like kind of moist. Like does a bunch of pieces of watermelon count as a mixture of dry things in which like if most of the pieces
I think so because it's distinct pieces rather than something that all mixes together. I think that's the distinction if I recall. This is Siman Sarichet. We can look this up. I believe it's as long as the pieces are distinct, rather than the tastes all converging. We say it's Yevesh Be'Yevesh, if I recall.
in which case all the watermelon is kosher.
I think so. It's good. I should review this more frequently. All of you know, you can all connect. It's all connected. It's all, you used to know this so well. All right. I remember.
Is the rind of the watermelon considered inside?
Like if you cut through the rind is kind of bitter. The rind is bitter. It's not harif. Okay, that's a difference, right? People get confused at Pesach time because like the horseradish is sharp but not bitter, whereas the romaine lettuce or the endive is bitter but not sharp, and the maror it's not the sharp herb, it's the bitter herb, right? So. And in terms of cutting and another, I think we talked about this last time, maybe not, but it's if you get fish from a non-kosher fishmonger, and they use the same knife they use for cutting treif pieces of fish, so it's cold, knife is cold, fish is cold, just you rinse it under cold water before you cook it and it's fine. So you have to make sure it's a kosher species, which is not so simple because there's a lot of fraud in the fish market. Lots of fish are mislabeled. So how do you know it's a kosher species? Because you buy a piece that still has the skin attached to it, so you can still see that it was from a kosher species, because you can see that the remnants of where the scales used to be are apparent, so you can tell that it was from a kosher species, or it's salmon and there are no non-kosher species of fish that have that color. I've heard someone say that codfish also is distinctive because it has that double, fillet kind of thing, right? It's sort of that, which no non-kosher fish maybe has that. I've heard that said. I whatever, but I would only fish from non-kosher fish. I would purchase if I can verify it's from a kosher species through seeing the skin or getting the whole fish, whatever it might be, and then you rinse it under cold water if they can use the kosher knife. Some places you can use you can bring a knife. In New York at Fairway they have a kosher knife. You can ask them to. Okay. Hey, 5. Okay, last sieve. Hatak kishuim, b'sakin shavasa, you cut squash. Okay, so there's vegetables that are not harif at all, with a neat knife. Mutar l'chlam b'chalav b'grei b'vad. You can cook them with dairy merely by scraping off a place where the meat knife cut. Shigror mekom chatak. What does grei mean? You just do like a little scraping. Okay. And if you cut turnip, I feel a great even that scraping off you don't need. El hadach be'alma. So it makes sense, right? A turnip, it's dense and it's hard. So if you cut a turnip and you just rinse the surface that you cut, like it's like totally clean. Whereas a squash, it's a little bit mushy, and so you gotta scrape a little bit away before you cook the rest of the squash with your dairy.
With what kind of utensil?
I'm imagining, like a cheese grater, or maybe like a peeler. Yeah, peeler would work. What?
So with a dairy utensil?
Well, maybe it's like maybe you have a Parv cheese grater that you use only for these types of. Is that your question? Was dairy or meat? Is that the question? Oh, because in theory you're removing it because it's meaty, so you wouldn't want to use a dairy. Good point. So yeah, I guess use a Parv knife or a very clean knife.
Ben Yomo here, no?
Is it Sumi Ben Yom? Yeah. It is ben yomo or it's dirty. I think that has to be the case, right? Yeah, I guess maybe you have some sort of grater or peeler that you use just for. It would require effort that you use for this. I don't think it would become contaminated by scraping off because it's cold and just you're removing it. It's yeah.
Or you could make a knife.
Yeah, right. You're right. Right, a knife, right, a meat knife even you could use. I think you use a dairy knife. It's clean. It's cold. You're just cutting off the spot that was contaminated by the. Again, you could use a meat knife to. To spread butter on your toast, right? Because it's cold and you're going to wash it off thoroughly afterwards. But it's cleaned before and it's thoroughly cleaned afterwards, and it's cold when it's in contact with the dairy. So I don't think it really matters. Below, not only Ella, afilu tsunun shechatach kar lefet shari badacha kamo halep. Okay, even if you cut a radish after you cut a turnip, it is permissible. The radish is permissible. Going back to the radish that we opened with, it's permissible merely with rinsing. Lefi shetam halefet mishuneh mevatal tam haniflat mehasakin, because the turnip changes and nullifies the taste that was absorbed from the knife. So knife to turnip, and then you cut a radish. The radish you just rinse off. You don't have to. Turnip and radish can be rinsed off. No need to remove the meaty place that or the non-kosher place in the radish, even though it's harif, even though it's sharp and has this power over taste, because the turnip is like it's like so uncharif. It's like so bland in its taste that it just kills everything. It's just killed off by the turnip. I think that's what he's saying. Look at this. And then the Ramaz of V'dafka lefet, and this is specifically the turnip. Shetamo mishuneh, because its taste mishuneh. Mishuneh changes or is strange. I think it mishuneh. The grammar. Which mishuneh is that? Which form is that? I want to make sure I'm be precise here. Is that an adjective or is that a verb? Mishuneh.
Well, it's an adjective. The Shulchan uses it as a verb.
Shetamo. No, here in the Ramah.
No, but it's
Mishana is active. Mishuna.
How do we know what the correct vowels are?
Good question.
Also a good point.
Well, the editor. What's the editor assuming? Who put the vowels in?
I think it's an adjective.
The editor assumes it's an adjective.
So its taste is taste
Or
strange.
unique. Let's
Unique.
say.
That's good. Okay, thank you. That's good. Okay. So turnips are unique in this way. Vayerek, lechem, or sharvri, but any other bread or any other vegetable, lo, doesn't work. Afilu belefet, ein latir lachatok tsun rak pamachad. Even with a turnip, you can't just cut with a turnip and then cut lots of radishes. You cut once with a turnip, then you get one swipe through the radish, okay, for free. Lo harbe palim, not many times. Im lo shechatach kol pam lefet bein chatichat snon with stone. Or you do turnip, radish, and then you just rinse them all and you're fine. Okay, so turnips are like the anti-chari. Okay, so the turnips. I don't know if this comes up. The piece that's I guess it's really number 4, which is the one that comes up. That people get questions. I get questions about that in terms of cut fruit, cut vegetables from like a regular supermarket. It seems to be okay based on this right here. Just one other thing I thought I'd just take a look at. This from the Pitchei Tshuva, trying to get a definition of charif or not. Pitchei Tshuva, I forget his name. He lived in the mid-19th century, and he wrote. It's sort of like an index to the responsa literature that's printed in the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, so Shulchan Aruch is written in the 17th century, printed and published in the 17th century, has commentaries. So in the 19th century, early 19th century, this rabbi who was near a town near Kovno, I forget the name of the town where he was also, but in Eastern Europe, he wrote, it's like a running commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, which is an index of the responsa literature connected to that particular point in the Shulchan Aruch, right? So the Shulchan Aruch becomes like the Dewey Decimal System of Jewish law. So 96.4, like that's the place where we discuss, cutting sharp things. And so Pitchei Tshuva, there in that location, the Shulchan Aruch, he brings his index, his digest from the response literature. It goes up until the mid 19th century. There's another similar work called the Darchei Tshuva, which was written in the early 20th century, which is the same basic project, updated, another 100 years. So it's, okay. The Darchei Tshuva was written by the Munkatcher Rebbe, the Minchat Elazar. It was like 2 or 3 generations of Munkatcher Rebbes who engaged in that process, but I guess the last one was the Minchat Elazar, who was the pre-war Rebbe of Munkatch. Anyway, that's not this. This is the Pitchei Tshuva. So Muluchim, in terms of the salty fish, Ayen ber hetev, L'inyan borscht. Okay, Ihave devar charif. Is borscht a devar charif or not? Vayen Prima Gadim. So look in the Prima Gadim is a 18th century commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. Shechriya te'im enu yachol l'shtoto chai have devar charif kitznon. Okay, if you can eat it raw, then it's harif. That's the definition. Can you eat it raw, or is it too sharp and hot to be eaten raw? That's the definition. Okay, but if you can eat it raw without cooking it first, then it's not so sharp to be devar harif. Then it's just like these pickled fruits and vegetables, which in a case of hefsed, a case of great loss, we're going to be lenient and not treat those as harif. They're a lesser status of harif. Vimhu miluban, beitzim shuv lo have devar harif, and if it's cooked with eggs, then it's also no longer devar harif. Hakol lefi reut einei hamoreh. Everything depending on the evidence observed by the one rendering the decision. So there's some amount of discretion, judicial discretion in determining what's harif. It seems to be based on some like your physical response to this food. Is it so sharp you have to cook it? Like people don't in general eat onions raw. I mean radishes people do eat raw, but in small quantities with other foods. You eat radishes just like that.
Why could people cook radishes?
I've seen recipes people cook radishes.
Yeah, I've seen too. No, but radishes are eaten raw. I mean, generally eat radishes like you chop them up into small pieces, you put them in a salad, where so you're not just like
Also, what about potatoes? You don't eat potatoes raw.
No, fine. Sorry, it's not anything that. Sorry, let me clarify. He's not saying anything that you eat raw is harif. He's saying like let's determine what's harif, what's not. Can you eat this thing raw, or is this thing commonly cooked before it becomes of garlic? You don't eat raw in general. Onions, you don't eat raw in general. I mean, again, you slice an onion, you can put it on a sandwich. That's great, but so you could. It's consumed raw. It's not eaten raw as a food. Okay, you wouldn't just eat like an onion. Generally, people don't eat radishes. I think just like big bites out of radishes. Just for the thrill. Generally, they cut them into pieces and put them in salad. Like onions, which again, you slice it, you eat with something, but not, or you cook it. And this means also that once the thing is cooked, and he says it here. So he talks about, and then he continues and quote and goes on to talk about the fact that the devar harif itself, when it's cooked, is no longer devar harif, right? So you cook the onions, they become sweet, they're no longer harif, and so depending on when the kashrut accident occurs, it might, even if it's an onion, we might still treat it as a non-harif food substance if the kashrut accident occurs after it's already been cooked. It's no longer harif. Yeah.
Harif is entirely unrelated to sharp cheeses? Or?
Sharp cheeses are not considered harif. Yeah, it's the same word, but it's not. It's kind of different, right? I mean, a sharp cheese is really a pungent cheese or a strong flavored cheese, which is very different from a radish, right? It's a totally different taste in your mouth. Salted fish is more like what?
No, could the cheese be like salted fish?
Cheese is more, I've never seen that though. You're right. I mean, maybe in some ways, it could be considered that way, but I've never heard of anyone referring to cheese as a devar harif. I think that I think it's enough. It's enough of a chumrah. The rules are sort of so. The normal rules of kashrut get sort of overturned in such dramatic ways for devar harif. I think it makes sense to limit it to the ones that are kind of like classically listed in the chalachot, not to invent new. Things that are harif. So that's what. Okay, so the Pirkei Tshuva wants to show you the piece of the definition that there is discretion, and then also the piece that I didn't read inside that the following lines, which discuss the fact that once things are cooked, they no longer are devar harif, and so that can also be a mitigating factor if the contaminant. We can think of a case though, you put onions in a pot, they saute, and then you add the whatever, and that's when what is that? It's an onion. No, if you add it in after, you brown the onions in the bottom of the pan, and then you add the whatever to it, so it's no longer devar harif. Whereas if you put it with the onions while the onions are still raw, then then we have the added strictures of the devar harif at play in the situation. Yeah.
So you're saying it's not a devar harif to retain the meat of the knife that it cooked with, that it was cut with? I'm not sure what you meant that it's not considered.
No. Let's think of a situation. Let's say I'm making soup. I cut.
Just you cut like onions with a dairy knife, you put it in a dairy pot, and then you cut something else with a meat knife, and then put that in that pot?
No.
In that pan?
Let's say that's not what it's not. Let's say you. I cut onions with a carving knife, put it in my pot to cook soup. First step is I brown the onions. So onions are parv when I cut them. They're parv when they go into the pan. They are parv when they're browned. And then, I don't know, some disaster ensues. And do I say, it was onions, there was onions in there, and the onions are harif? I say, no, the onions were not harif when whatever it is happened because they're already browned before you poured in the whatever into the pot. Does that make sense? We could think of a scenario if we need to. Was that too abstract? Should we think of a real case? Is that, AJ, you okay? Or are you? Oh, okay, no, sorry. Yeah. Sarah? You, yeah.
Could you just define that term? I just asked you. I find it.
Harif?
Yes.
Something sharp. A sharp
So why
food.
would that be sharp? That could change the.
A sharp food that changes the normal law. A sharp food, it absorbs taste from a knife or from a pan, even when it's cold. It absorbs taste even when they're rancid in 24 hours. It revives them, and so it has sort of these extra strict rules. That's what I'm referring to by harif. Sorry. No. You cut it with a meat knife when it's cold, the onion is now a meat onion, and whatever happens. But if it's, yeah, exactly. So that's why the question is, when did the onion, when did you add the thing to the onions? When did you, it's like before you cooked it or after you cooked it? Like that would be, that's what it would, Yeah, it's interesting. What if you, because even an onion, doesn't absorb taste, only absorbs taste from a knife that's cut in a way that's unusual, but doesn't absorb taste from so put the cut onion with a, say you cut onion with a meat knife, and I don't confidently answer this, because here's here, so I shouldn't be raising this question, but I'll raise, you cut an onion with a meat knife, and then you put it in a dairy frying pan, and you turn on the frying pan. So just putting the meat onions in the dairy frying pan, it's cold. Onions are cold. Even onions, they're still cold. They're not going to trafe anything up when they're cold. But then you turn the frying pan on, and now you have heat. So the question is, does the onion lose its harif status? No, it wouldn't matter. That wouldn't matter, actually. No, sorry. That wouldn't matter. That would be a problem, because the onions become meat. They're meat onions, and so once you cook it in a dairy frying pan, that's a problem. But if you, let's say you cook the onions in a higher frying pan, and you go, okay, you're making omelets. Making omelets, and you cook the onion in a hard frying pan. The onions are meat because you cut them with a meat knife. You saute the onions, and then you add your eggs, and then you add your cheese to the omelet. So if the onions are browned, no, that wouldn't matter anyway, so that also wouldn't make a difference.
You add cheese to the omelet after frying. Because otherwise you would frying.
Good. You take the omelet out. No, because if the onions are more than 60, the omelet is a meat omelet. No, I got it. Not a good.
Cut them with something.
Yeah, that would be right. That for sure. But there are probably more interesting questions about. Okay, we can try to look at some better questions about that. Yeah, I guess here's one. Here's the one about the borscht. And it's like they're cooking, or not. After the borscht example, he talks about you're making Subin is some sort of food, some sort of dish. Derech lachma mayim b'kli rishon al esh. You heat water on a kli rishon on the fire, and then you put the subin in, which is some sort of grain. The chavit in a frying pan, al yidei irui, you pour it in. It stays a day or 2 days there, and then it becomes vinegary. And then you warm the water in a dairy pot. It's ben yom. Okay, so it's a whole. I don't know exactly what the subin is, so I don't know, but there are cases. We can think of others. Sorry, yes, John.
So far in the Shulchan Aruch, and until like maybe one of the examples you just said, we'd only talked about cutting being like the mechanism by which the interaction of like meat and charif is happening.
Yes.
So is that relevant, or is it?
Yeah, I don't think there would be any. I think just touching wouldn't.
I feel like something just that has appeared to come up for me, but maybe it's not a problem at all. It's like just as I'm putting the onions that were cooked in like a fire of whatever way into the frying pan, like it's not soft yet. Maybe I'm like mixing them and like stirring them with some different thing. But, like my impression based on this is that like it's the knife that's really important. Like the spoon that they're interacting with now is not so
correct.
important.
Yeah. If you stick a spoon into mustard, it's not a problem. It's the pressure of the knife combined with the harifut, the sharpness of the food that causes this dynamic. If you mix onions into like a batter, or you mix garlic, you sort of mix something into a bigger mixture, and then you cook it, and so the taste is sort of like I don't know, garlic and honey. I don't know, something. You're making some sort of dish where the sharpness is totally diluted, in some other mixture, and then you put it in the frying. That also wouldn't be harif, that would, because it's not harif anymore. It's the actual physical reality at the time. Any other final questions on? Okay, so thanks for coming. Obviously, with follow-up questions about Kashrut, please anytime, ask me anytime, and thanks for attending.